A lone deep space astronaut with amnesia realizes he's humanity's only hope against a mysterious alien microorganism. In Project Hail Mary, that's the book I'm reviewing on this episode of SFF 180. Hello again, everyone. Thomas here, your host as always. Thank you for joining me. Hard science fiction has never exactly been a genre known for its accessibility to a mass audience. Indeed, many of the authors who are best known for hard SF haven't shown much interest in crafting their books to be that accessible. Of course, there have been outliers, right? Arthur C. Clarke, with more than 100 million copies of his books sold worldwide, which is more than fantasy giants like George R.R. Martin and Robert Jordan, is the most popular author to specialize in hard SF, and Chinese superstar Liu Sujian has sold 8 million copies worldwide of The Three-Body Problem, a book that includes Barack Obama among its most devoted fans. But for the most part, hard SF has appealed to hard SF junkies who are happy, and maybe even a little smug, in their position as a niche fandom. Andy Weir upturned a lot of preconceptions about hard SF with his breakout novel The Martian, which married hard science fiction's strong sense of fidelity to scientific accuracy, with relatable characters and plenty of smart-ass humor. It was a hard SF novel your non-SF reading mom could enjoy, depending on her tolerance for F-bombs. But Weir's long-awaited follow-up, 2017's Artemis, was a letdown in every way, with a weaker, duller story overall, and a misguided attempt at diversifying his characters. I mean, there's little point in trying to write from the point of view of a young Muslim woman if you're just going to make her talk and act and snark exactly like Mark Watney from The Martian. In Project Hail Mary, Andy Weir has responded to the disappointing reception of Artemis by retreating to his comfort zone. Now, this would be a liability for most authors, and indeed it will become one for him if he ends up never really being able to break out of it. But for now, he understands what he's good at, and Project Hail Mary plays to every one of his strengths. The book takes the premise of The Martian and remixes everything about it, broadening the scope and raising the stakes as high as they can go. Once again, we have a solo astronaut who seems to be at the mercy of fate, but this time, instead of the world rallying to save him, it's up to him to save the world. And instead of confining the action to our neighbor in the sky, this novel sends us into deep space in a race against time thriller that scientifically does quite a lot of work, incorporating a first contact scenario and speculating on ontological origin of life questions. With a masterful command of pacing and tension, Project Hail Mary is a better book than The Martian on every front. And though it remains to be seen if there's any other kind of story Andy Weir might ever be good at, he proves beyond doubt that he's damn good at this kind. The premise here is a doozy. There's a pandemic affecting the sun, a microorganism of unknown origin that consumes heat and that has somehow migrated through space, affecting not only our own sun but many neighboring stars, is a potential extinction event for life on Earth if the sun's luminescence dips below a very narrow threshold. It sounds crazy, but Weir expertly sets it all down so that it's always completely plausible. Ryland Grace had a once promising career as a molecular biologist that was torpedoed when he published a widely derided scientific paper suggesting it could be possible for life to emerge without liquid water. Now, teaching junior high school science, Grace finds himself conscripted into an international team of researchers pushing the clock to find a solution to what Grace calls the astrophage, a microorganism that is consuming nuclear heat from the sun, while, for some reason, traveling back and forth between the sun and Venus. The crisis is dire. If left unchecked, it will be the accelerated opposite of global warming, causing an instant ice age that will result in mass wildlife extinctions and the loss of half the human race within 19 years. Astronomers have discovered that every star within a few short light years of Earth is also dimming, with one curious exception, Tau Ceti. A space mission to that star is fast-tracked in what amounts to a very real Hail Mary pass. the long-shot hope that the secret to controlling and reversing the effect of astrophage might be found somewhere in the Tau Ceti system. From the opening page, we know that Grace has been chosen to board Hail Mary as one of its 3 mission astronauts. We meet him as he is awakening from his induced coma, with memory loss, only to make the shocking discovery that his 2 other crewmates didn't survive the voyage, and that he is no longer in our solar system. As Grace recovers and tries to get a handle on his situation, Weir employs what is almost always a bad storytelling idea, but one he manages against all reason to make work to his advantage: a flashback structure. By spacing all of the pre-mission scenes set on Earth to match Grace's slowly recovering memory, Weir manages to establish everything he needs to in his narrative, while simultaneously drawing us into Grace's survival scenario and his growing realization of what he now has to accomplish all alone. Or will he? I suppose I don't need to worry that revealing the book's big second act surprise will be any kind of spoiler, since every other review you've seen of it by now has almost certainly just spelled it out. But, you know, I like to play fair with my audience. Suffice it to say that while much of Project Hail Mary's story is propelled by the kind of science the shit out of it action that drove The Martian, with our hapless hero desperately MacGyvering solutions to seemingly insurmountable technical catastrophes, the heart of the story lies in a surprise friendship that Weir effortlessly makes funny and thrilling and moving in equal measure. And even in this, Weir is eager to go the opposite direction of every overworked SF trope, such as the very Arthur C. Clarke idea that any extraterrestrials we encounter will be so unfathomably advanced that to us they'll be as unto gods. It's a testament to how well Project Hail Mary comes together that my biggest complaints just amount to little nitpicks. I mean, the story would have been better if Weir had fixed them, but they don't really amount to serious plot flaws either. For instance, in the Earth scenes, I wish Weir had done more with the issue of science denialism. In order to get the story moving very quickly, Weir asks us to accept, a bit too uncritically, the idea that the world would have immediately set aside its political differences and come together to combat an existential threat to human survival. But we've already seen the world not doing that in its fractured response to things like climate change and COVID-19. I mean, when we have an entire political party in this country who practically took it as a policy position that COVID was a hoax and that social distancing and mask wearing were tyranny, imagine how the anti-science crowd would react to being told that a space virus was eating the sun. Look, I understand that Weir probably didn't want such a plot element to end up dominating the story, which it easily could have done. But to not mention it at all as an issue kind of robs the narrative of some of its realism. There's one scene in which a character named Strat, who is the hard-ass administrator of the Hail Mary project with nearly autocratic power to command the resources of entire nations, has to deal with a group of pain-in-the-ass IP lawyers who don't like that copyrighted scientific papers are being loaded into the ship's computers without proper rights clearances. It's a gratuitous scene, and it could have easily been replaced by one where, I don't know, let's say Strat is facing down some irascible senator intent on blocking funding, or something like that. But, on a better note, Weir does have Strat remind us that even if the Hail Mary mission is a complete success, there'll be nothing like a Hollywood happy ending for the Earth. The worst effects of astrophage will impact the planet well before the ship has had time to get its findings back home, and so there's going to be food shortages, leading to famine and war and untold misery. It's a bleak situation. But, like any good hard science storyteller, Andy Weir is aware that truth can't be whitewashed or wished away because it's not what we want to hear. And that is all I have time for on this episode of SFF 180. You guys remember the most important thing, these are reviews. You are not always going to agree with me, but if you enjoyed watching, please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and above all, please subscribe. If you have not done so, that is how the channel grows. You can also support the channel at my TeePublic store and at my Patreon, where recruits into Wink's Army get little perks like early access on some of my videos. I use the Patreon money to pay Matt Olson, my wonderfully talented channel artist, for all of the beautiful thumbnails that he does for me, which make my channel stand out. So thank you all for all that additional support if you are one of my Patreons, and I want to thank all the rest of you for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube. And until I see all of you next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and happy reading.